to the world. Subscribe now to the Hot 97 YouTube channel. It's Ebro in the Morning with Laura Stylez and Rosenberg.
Ladies and gentlemen, running for the 15th district, right, Ritchie?
The 15th Congressional, New York 15.
New York 15, we have on the phone, that's the Bronx. Yes, sir.
The South Bronx.
There it is, representing the South Bronx, Ritchie Torres. We've heard a lot of negativity about you, so let's get right to it. Many articles have been written about your flip-flopping on the Right to Know Act. You're being backed by a lot of big corporations who have real estate interests and want to take over the South Bronx and displace people. They also don't back affordable housing. And so we wanted to bring you on because our people on our team, you brought some spots on the air, and we wanted to hear directly from you. So let's start with the Right to Know Act.
Sure.
This was the act, you know, that a lot of people were pushing for with regard to police reform and transparency, et cetera, et cetera. You have a close relationship, I'm told, or based on the articles, also with the NYPD and police. It says here, Torres negotiated a backroom deal with Mayor de Blasio and the Police Benevolence Association and the NYPD Officers Union. What do you have to say about that?
Well, that's a lie. So in my race, the PBA has a candidate. His name is Ruben Diaz Sr. He's the preferred candidate of the Police Benevolent Association. And I've never negotiated a bill with the Police Benevolent Association because, to be blunt, it's a corrupt institution, and you cannot reason with an organization that refuses to be reasoned with. So in legislation, the bill that you originally introduce is often different from the bill that you pass. Mm-hmm. That's not the product of flip-flopping, that's the product of negotiation. I'm not a dictator, I cannot impose 100% of my will. I have to negotiate bills with the mayor. That's the nature of checks and balances. You know, I delivered a speech about the Right to Know Act, a 15-minute speech in December of 2017. And I encourage people to listen to the speech. It's on YouTube, and to judge for themselves. I encourage people to read the bill and judge for themselves. You know, the premise of the Right to Know Act is that we cannot improve police-community relations without first improving the day-to-day interactions between police and civilians. So the Right to Know Act bill that I negotiated had two provisions. First, it would require officers to identify themselves in the form of a business card when an interaction escalates. So during the height of stop and frisk policing, there were 600,000 stops. If my bill had been in effect back in 2011, during the height of stop and frisk policing, each and every single one of those 600,000 stops would have been subject to the identification requirements of the Right to Know Act. The second provision requires the police to inform you of your constitutional right to decline a search, a consent search, in the absence of probable cause or a warrant. So just like the officers have to Mirandize you, have to inform you about your right to remain silent, officers now have to inform you about your right to decline a search. So we established something resembling a Miranda right for consent searches. Did I get 100% of what I wanted or what the advocates wanted? No, but if I can get 90%, I'm going to take 90%. Like my philosophy, and not everyone has this philosophy, some progress is better than none at all, because I see a compromise not as a ceiling, but as a floor, as a foundation on which to build more progress in the future. That's how I approach legislation. I moved the ball as far as I could, as much as I could, in the face of overwhelming opposition from the mayor and the speaker. When the mayor and the speaker, the two most powerful elected officials, are against you, or conspiring against you at every turn, there is a limit to what you could do. So I did the best I could given those challenges.
Do you support Defund the Police as a movement?
I do, and the city council supports. We put forward a proposal for defunding the NYPD by $1 billion. A few months ago, the mayor put forward a budget that eviscerated youth services by 1/3, while only cutting the NYPD's budget by 1/3 of 1%. And we in the city council said that is a non-starter. That's unacceptable to us. There needs to be a radical redistribution of resources from policing into social services and community-based alternatives to overcriminalization.
Is the tone of people saying that you're not to be trusted or you're a liar, is that based on, what is that based on in your opinion?
I mean, that's some people, but I have, according to an independent poll by Data for Progress, Ruben Diaz Sr. and I are in a statistical tie. He has 22%, I have 20%, everyone else is far behind, polling in single digits. Ruben Diaz Sr. is the most anti-LGBTQ, anti-choice, pro-Trump, pro-PBA elected official in New York City politics. So the voters have a clear choice. It's between a real Democrat and a pro-Trump Republican pretending to be a Democrat. And that's the choice before the voters. Look, everyone has political vendettas, but I have thousands of supporters in the South Bronx. One of my supporters is Leandra Guzman, who's the mother of Junior, who said that in her moment of greatest crisis, no elected official was more supportive of her than I was. And she has endorsed my campaign for Congress. So every politician has detractors, but I have far more supporters than I have detractors. The New York Times has described me as an unusually effective council member. The Daily News has said that at age 32, I've had a lasting impact on New York City politics. So I'm a young man of color who grew up in poverty, who has struggled with substance abuse and depression and had a whole host of struggles in my life. When I ran for public office, I was 24, openly gay, on food stamps, had no ties to the dynasties of Bronx politics, no ties to the party machine, but I knocked on thousands of doors. I went into people's homes, I heard their stories, and I won my first campaign on the strength of door-to-door, face-to-face grassroots campaigning. No one has given me a damn thing. I have earned and fought for everything I have in my life.
Who's your most controversial financial backer, in your opinion?
I don't know. I don't. Different people find.
What about the real estate groups?
I think my most controversial donor might be Dan Loeb.
And why is that?
But Dan Loeb is the leading funder of criminal justice reform and marriage equality. So there are some issues in which Dan and I agree, and he has been a generous contributor to criminal justice reform, in particular, raise the age. He's controversial in some progressive circles because he's a supporter of charter schools, but there are thousands of parents who have chosen charter schools for their children.
For sure.
Parents have a right to choose the best education for their children. Who am I as an elected official to tell parents, I know what's better for your children than you do? I think that's an issue on which reasonable people can disagree, but that's made him radioactive.
Organizer Tamika Mallory wrote a piece basically breaking down why she feels that you're not fit for this position. But besides the right to know, she also talked about you being for more cops on the streets of the Bronx. And you voted for plans to build new jails in the Bronx. What do you say to that?
So first of all, I'm not in favor of more police. I actually am in favor of defunding the police. It's worth noting that Tamika Mallory is a friend of Michael Blake, right? The release of this letter is politically motivated. It reflects the desperation of a failing candidate, Michael Blake, who's polling in single digits, right? That's what this is. I know a political hatchet job when I see one, and that's what this is. On the issue of jails, the city council put forward a plan for closing Rikers Island based on a consensus that Rikers Island had become ground zero for the decriminalization of people of color, for the poor, for the mentally ill. One of my constituents, Khalif Browder, was at Rikers Island for 3 years, spent most of his time in solitary confinement, and the experience was so traumatic that he committed suicide. So we all agree that we needed to close Rikers Island, and if we're going to rebuild jails, it's better to have them in communities so that people in those jails can have access to their families. I'm not an abolitionist. Some people have to go to jail, right? The young men who murdered Junior Guzman have to go to prison. That's it, right? Some people, I'm not an abolitionist of all jails, but I think there should be fewer jails. There should be fewer people in those jails. Those jails should have humane conditions. And under the city council's plan, the jail population went from a high of over 20,000, and it's going to be as low as 3,000. That's a nearly 700% decrease in the jail population. That's the largest breakthrough toward decriminalization and decarceration in the history of the United States. So that's a plan that I support.
Back to real estate. You got a lot of real estate support for your campaign? Real estate financial backing?
I think nearly every elected official has received contributions from.
Well, I'm just saying you specifically.
Real estate people. But what I will tell you, I have taken a no corporate PAC pledge. So I have not received a single dollar from a corporation, including real estate corporations. Right?
The reason I ask it that way is because the South Bronx is a hot spot for gentrification and the displacement of affordable housing, et cetera, et cetera. And I know that there's a lot of real estate, for lack of a better term, opportunists, vultures, whatever you want to call them, that would love to take that district that you would be representing. How do you plan to keep these people in their homes in the South Bronx if you're getting this job? What is your commitment to these people to make sure that they're not going to lose their homes or get pushed out of the South Bronx? Since you say everybody's taking real estate money, but you're in a district that is very, very heated as far as, prime real estate.
I just want to be clear about my record. So, I've been the leading advocate for public housing in the city of New York. I had a role in securing $3 billion for improvements in public housing, which is the largest FEMA grant in the history of New York City. I have passed laws that have held landlords accountable for failing to make repairs. Even during COVID-19, when I had COVID myself, I passed a law that prohibits harassment against tenants for any reason relating to COVID-19.
I like all that, and we got limited time. I just want to know.
But I just want to be clear about my record.
That's fine.
So on the question of, for me, the number one issue is affordable housing.
That's right.
We need to ensure, the problem is most of the housing that we're creating is unaffordable to the poorest New Yorkers. Whenever you're creating affordable housing, the number one question is affordable for whom?
Right.
So we have to create affordable housing that is genuinely affordable to the poorest New Yorkers. It should not be based on area median income or neighborhood income. It should be based on household income. You should pay no more than 30% of your income toward your rent. So we need an expansion of the public housing program, the Section 8 program. Those are the greatest safety nets for deeply affordable housing in a place like the South Bronx.
And you're committed to getting that done if you get this job?
That's my number one priority. I would not be where I am today were it not for public housing and the stability it gave me and my family. I'm a product of the social safety net, and I want to make sure everyone has the same opportunities that I did.
Well, Ritchie Torres defending himself. Yep, there's a lot of people who don't believe what you're saying. So if you get the job,
people. More people are supporting it. Everyone has a political agenda and a political vendetta, but there are far more people in this district who support me. This is a political hatchet job from a politician who's been accused of corrupt behavior.
And who's that's been of corrupt behavior?
Mr. Blake. I mean, Michael Blake has been accused by Times Union of gaming the per diem system, which constitutes a theft of public funds. He's been accused by Cranes of living illegally in an affordable housing unit in violation of an HPD regulatory agreement. He's the only elected official I know of who attempted to become a partner at a lobbying firm while serving in elected office. And at one point, he introduced a bill on behalf of Airbnb, which was represented by a firm that was paying Michael Blake consulting fees. So he was effectively a legislator and a lobbyist for a special interest at the same time. I conduct investigations at the city council. He's the target of investigations. The difference between us is clear.
Woo, Mike, what you got to say, son?
Yeah, Ritchie, that was very interesting. That was an interesting appearance. I'm glad you came on.
Thanks for coming on, man.
Thanks for coming on.
We'll thank my mother. She's a fan of the show, and she said you got to go on. So
Mom. Yo, Mom.
And he loves his
what
mom.
up, Mom?
He loves his mom.
Thank you, man.
Hey, Ritchie.
Thank you,
Ritchie. I hope we can believe you, and I hope you prove everybody wrong, man. If you're honest, because look, you're representing the South Bronx.
So
it's near and dear to our hearts. We've watched it change names. Now it's called Sobro. We're watching a lot of change that makes us uncomfortable. And we want to believe that individuals that are getting these jobs today on voting day, honestly are who they say they are. You know what I mean? And we've, as a show, we've been supporters of AOC, who has, upheld her end of the bargain. We like Jamal Bowman. We really want to see a turnover. I believe, I can't speak for everybody on the show, but I believe we need a lot of progressives in to offset a lot of the mediocrity and a lot of the kind of, conservative pandering that takes place so that people can stay in these jobs and stay as elected officials, right? Electeds often sort to whoever's voting. And as you know, as somebody who's, been doing this for a little bit now, the people who usually turn out to vote tend to be more conservative. They tend to be older. They tend to be more moderate. But those type of politicians aren't getting us the progress I hope to see in the next 10 years. So hopefully we could trust you.
We need a new generation of leadership. There are some elected officials who are so entrenched in their office, they begin to view it as a property right.
Right.
As a sense of entitlement.
We've seen it.
We have to get rid of that complacency, and we need new blood in power.
Do you like Elliot Engel?
it's time for a new generation of leadership. I'm in favor of a new generation of leadership, and I'm not weighing in on particular races because I have my own race to worry about, but I represent new blood.
You and AOC get along?
I don't know AOC personally, so I admire her. She's enormously talented. She's become the conscience of the progressive movement, but I don't know her personally.
And how do you define yourself as a progressive, a moderate? How do you define yourself?
I define myself as a progressive, but not as a Democrat. I don't embrace the term democratic socialist, but I embrace the term progressive.
Okay. Ritchie Torres, it was a pleasure meeting you, man. Hopefully we get to talk to you again.
Thanks, Ritchie.
God bless you. Thank you for having me.
All right,
Thanks,
take care.
Ritchie.